Rudolf Steiner spoke of a Michaelic cosmic turning point in time, during which certain souls incarnated to consciously oppose the growing tide of materialism. I believe these souls carry an invisible signature, a unique vibration that both isolates them and empowers them. You, my friend, might belong to them, to those who came to earth under the regency of Michael, the archangel of cosmic courage. But what does this truly mean for your concrete life? For those moments when you ask yourself why everything seems so difficult, why you never feel completely at home anywhere, I've come to understand that the answer lies not in adapting to the world, but in comprehending your soul's origin. Your generation, our generation, was born into a cosmic turning point. Steiner taught that the 20th century marked the end of the Kali Yuga, that 5,000-year epoch of spiritual darkness. The souls who incarnated between 1950 and 1980 stood at the threshold of two ages.
We did not come into times of peace, but into times of transition, where the old breaks down and the new has not yet taken shape. This, I believe, explains the inner turmoil many of us feel. We were born to be a bridge between what is passing away and what must become. This position carries a burden that is rarely seen or acknowledged. You and I were not chosen for an easy life, but for a necessary one. Steiner described how souls, before their incarnation, looked at the tasks of this epoch and consciously said yes, not out of naivety, but from the knowledge that precisely in the confrontation with materialism lies a possibility for development that earlier ages did not offer. Every technological achievement that our generation witnessed, from television to computers to the internet, is not neutral. It carries within it a force that can alienate humans from themselves if a spiritual equilibrium is not created.
I know we grew up in a world that still knew the rhythms of nature. Yet we were thrust into an artificial acceleration. This tension is no accident. It is part of the test we face, often without even knowing it. Many of us report a feeling of loss, as if we have lost something essential along the way. Steiner would say that we have lost nothing, but are called to consciously rediscover what was once instinctively given. Our souls carried memories of earlier incarnations, where spiritual connection was natural, where rituals and silence permeated everyday life. Living in a world that denies all this creates a spiritual hunger, a longing for something we may never have experienced in this life, but that our soul knows deeply. This nostalgia, I assure you, is not a weakness, but a compass. The etheric body, as Steiner described it, is the carrier of life forces and spiritual memory. Our generation, I've observed, experienced an unprecedented attack on this subtle body through sensory overload, mass media, and the unnatural rhythm of modern life. When the etheric body loses its sacred rhythm, the entire organism reacts. The epidemic of chronic exhaustion, depressions, and autoimmune diseases in our generation are not random phenomena. They are the responses of a spiritual organism to a hostile environment. The etheric body withdraws, fragments, when life loses its sacred order. I understand if you feel not fully anchored in this world. It's not because something is wrong with you, but because the bridge between the physical and the spiritual has been attacked. Steiner offered a path to healing, a return to natural rhythms, to meditative practices, to art and nature, not as an escape, but as a restoration of what has been wounded. Every step in this direction is an act of resistance against the forces that seek to separate you from your own source. Can you feel, as I do, how something in you relaxes when you sit in silence? When you feel earth under your hands? When you contemplate beauty without purpose? That, my friends, is the etheric body breathing again. Steiner identified Ahriman as that spiritual force which pushes humanity into total materialism, into coldness of heart, into the denial of the spirit. Our generation, I believe, lives at the peak of Ahrimanic influence. Every device, every screen, every notification is a temptation to fragment our consciousness. Ahriman works through technology without soul, through science without reverence, through speed without presence. I know this hardening of the soul, this growing difficulty to feel deeply, to be moved, to cry. This is not evolution, but Ahrimanic ice penetrating human hearts. Michael, Steiner taught, is the archangel who directly confronts the Ahrimanic forces. Souls under his regency incarnate with the ability to develop free thinking and moral courage.
These, I realize, are the only weapons against Ahriman. If you feel that something is fundamentally wrong with the direction of civilization, you are not crazy. You are perceiving what Steiner revealed 100 years ago. This perception is both your gift and your burden. It isolates you from those who are still asleep, but it connects you with a truth that is greater than any societal consensus. In the depths of your being, Steiner distinguished between the lower self, the ego of personality, and the higher self, the eternal individuality. The tragedy of our generation, I've seen, lies in the fact that we were trained to strengthen the ego, while the true self withered in oblivion. External success with inner emptiness, because we built the wrong life. The true self sleeps in the depths, while the social mask directs life. Do you recognize yourself in this, as I recognize myself? This dissonance between what you live externally and what your soul knows creates that existential crisis that many of us experience between 40 and 60 years of age. Steiner observed that in this phase of life, the higher self knocks at the door with greater urgency. What we call a midlife crisis, I believe, is in truth a spiritual invitation. The crises of these years are not breakdowns, but calls. There is a voice within you that always knew the truth, but it was stifled for years by conditioning. Steiner called this the higher moral conscience, not social guilt, but the voice of your own inner divinity. Every year you ignore this call, life becomes harder, more meaningless, more mechanical. Not because you have failed, but because you are betraying your own eternity. The spiritual path in modern times, Steiner taught, is essentially lonely, not out of misanthropy, but because each soul must find its own connection to the spiritual world, without intermediaries. No one can do the work for you that your soul came to accomplish. This explains, I think, why you don't find your tribe, why relationships seem superficial, why you feel misunderstood. You are on a path that few choose to walk. Steiner described a phase in which seekers lose all old certainties without having found the new ones yet. It is the desert, absolute solitude. You might be standing in it now. The temptation is great to return to automatic living, to fall asleep again, to pretend the unease doesn't exist. But Steiner warned that after the awakening of the true self, there is no return without severe karmic consequences. Nevertheless, although lonely on the physical plane, Steiner assured that no sincere seeker walks alone. There are spiritual guides, protective forces, a community with kindred souls in the higher worlds, even if you don't consciously perceive them. Your loneliness, I realize, is horizontal, not vertical. Upwards, you are connected, even if you don't feel it. Steiner revolutionized spiritual thinking by teaching that freedom is not given, but must be conquered through conscious knowledge and transformed will. I believe we were born into a time where this conquest became both more difficult and more necessary. True freedom exists only when the self becomes master of itself, free from both instinct and external compulsion. Before our incarnation, we looked at the challenges of this epoch and said, yes. We saw in them the possibility of an evolutionary leap that other ages would not offer. There is no societal reward for what you do or what I do. Steiner knew this and affirmed that the reward is not external, but the transformation of the soul substance itself. Every conscious step you take, I realize, benefits not only you. Steiner taught that every inner achievement of a soul radiates into the human collective. Your silent struggle, my friend, changes the world in ways you will never see. This is Michael's promise. No ease, but meaning. For souls like ours, meaning weighs more than happiness, truth more than comfort. Steiner emphasized the development of thinking as the first step. Not associative, passive thinking, but active, concentrated thinking. Meditation, I have found, is not a luxury, but a necessity. In silence, you train the ability to consciously form and direct thoughts. This is the first liberation, the mastery over your own stream of thought. The schooling of the emotional world is the second step. Steiner spoke of the necessity to develop equanimity, not as insensitivity, but as inner stability. I know this emotional exhaustion, this constant reacting to external stimuli. The exercise lies in cultivating an inner observer who feels without being overwhelmed. The third area is the purification of the will. Steiner taught that the will is the deepest member of the human soul. Most people, I observe, live in a state where their will is guided by unconscious drives and habits. True freedom of will arises when you see through your motivations, when you recognize what truly moves you. Every conscious decision against comfort strengthens this free will. Steiner also spoke of the auxiliary exercises, those 6 qualities that the esoteric student should develop: thought control, initiative of action, serenity, positivity, impartiality, and inner harmony. These, I believe, are concrete tools for daily life. Thought control means thinking for 5 minutes daily about a self-chosen object without wandering. Initiative of action means doing something new daily. Serenity means consciously remaining calm in disturbing situations. These exercises may seem small, yet over years they transform the entire structure of your being. You might ask yourself, as I have, why these exercises in a world that screams for instant solutions? Steiner would answer that true transformation happens slowly, in the depths, invisible to external eyes. The modern world trains us for impatience. Spiritual development, on the other hand, requires the opposite: patience, perseverance, trust in processes that show no immediate results. The relationship with other people changes through this inner work. Steiner taught that true community is only possible between free individuals. As you become more conscious, I've noticed, many relationships may no longer sustain you. This is painful, but necessary. On a deeper level, true encounter becomes possible. That rare connection between souls who recognize each other in their freedom. Your sensitivity, which you might feel as a burden, is, I assure you, your most valuable instrument. Steiner emphasized that precisely the most sensitive souls have the ability to perceive finer worlds. But this gift must be trained. The exercise lies in refining your perceptual ability without being overwhelmed. You learn to distinguish: what is my own emotion? What am I picking up from others? What comes from spiritual realms? Steiner warned against a specific danger: the temptation to collect spiritual insights as intellectual knowledge without living them. You can read books, listen to lectures, understand theories, and yet not be developed. The decisive step, I emphasize, is the implementation into concrete life. Every insight that does not become action deepens the gap between knowledge and being. The world will not get better through your theories, but through your transformation. Steiner taught that every human being who develops inwardly contributes to the evolution of all humanity, invisibly but truly. You don't need a big stage, no followers. The quiet work on yourself, I truly believe, is more revolutionary than you can imagine. Every time you consciously choose instead of reacting, you change the morphogenetic field of humanity. This is not comfort for later, no deferral to heavenly rewards. It is a concrete spiritual fact. The spiritual world registers every effort, every struggle, every small victory over yourself. Steiner described how the deceased look at the earth and see the lights of souls who are consciously working. You are not alone, not forgotten, not unimportant. There is a moment in this life, I promise you, when you will realize that everything you have been through was necessary. The pains, the confusions, the loneliness had their place in the larger picture of your soul's development. Steiner spoke of looking back at one's own life with new eyes. What you considered chance reveals itself as destiny. What you considered bad luck reveals itself as a lesson. Steiner described 7-year cycles in human development, which structure life like cosmic breaths. From birth to 7 years, the physical body develops. From 7 to 14, the etheric body. From 14 to 21, the astral body. Around 21, the ego development begins, which in turn proceeds in phases. If you look at your life through this lens, you will recognize patterns. The crises you went through were not coincidences, but natural transitions between developmental phases. This realization removes the drama from suffering and gives it meaning. Between the ages of approximately 52 and 56, Steiner said, a person reaches a special maturity. This is the time when consciousness can detach from the body, where wisdom becomes possible that does not come from books, but from lived life. Many of us are now approaching this phase, or are already in it. This is not the beginning of the end, but possibly the beginning of the most fruitful years of your life, if you are willing to change your perspective. Youth strives for conquest. Age can cultivate wisdom. Our culture despises aging because it only sees the body. But the soul matures. It unfolds qualities that were impossible in youth. Steiner also taught about the importance of sleep as a spiritual practice. Every night, your I and your astral body leave the physical and etheric bodies and return to the spiritual world. There, I understand, you receive guidance. There, you process the experiences of the day on deeper levels. However, if your day was chaotic, if your consciousness is fragmented, the night also remains without true rest. Preparation for sleep is therefore essential. Steiner recommended reviewing the day before falling asleep, from evening to morning, not judging, but observing. This exercise cleanses the daily consciousness and enables deeper sleep, in which true regeneration takes place. Awakening is just as important as falling asleep. The first moments of the day shape the quality of the entire day. If you immediately grab your phone, you have already lost yourself before the day began. Steiner would recommend lingering in bed for a few more minutes, consciously returning to the body, collecting yourself, setting an inner alignment. This simple practice can change everything. It gives you sovereignty over your day instead of reactively stumbling into it. The development of clairvoyance, which many seek, is for Steiner not the goal, but a possible consequence of inner development. He strongly warned against chasing occult forces for their own sake. True clairvoyance, I understand, arises from moral purification,
from the schooling of thinking and the refinement of feeling. It comes when the soul is ready, not when the ego desires it. Many people confuse fantasy or wishful thinking with spiritual perception.
The test is always the same. Does this experience make you more humble, more loving, clearer, or does it feed your ego, your feeling of specialness?
Steiner sharply distinguished between genuine spiritual perception and astral illusion. Our generation also has the task of being a bridge to the next generation. The children and grandchildren who are now being born, I believe, come with even greater challenges. Steiner spoke of future incarnations with completely different abilities. Your role, and mine, is to give these young souls space to find their own truth. Our gift to them is our presence, our stability, our lived wisdom. Steiner promised no easy journey. He promised meaning. He promised that your life is not in vain. He promised that your soul knew what it was getting into and that it is stronger than you believe in your darkest moments. He promised that truth exists and that you can find it as an inner certainty.
He promised that Michael stands beside you, invisible but real, in every moment where you fight for the light within you. If you have listened this far, you recognize yourself in these words. You are not a random generation. You are the generation that stands between two ages, that can no longer bear the old and does not yet fully see the new. You are the generation that must dare to leap without knowing where it will land. You are the generation that Steiner saw when he looked into the future and spoke of those who would come to continue the work. Your task, my friend, is not to save the world. Your task is to find yourself. Your task is to awaken the true self that sleeps within you. Your task is to conquer the freedom that no one can give you. Your task is to become conscious. Everything else will follow from that. The world needs no more unconscious people, no more sleepers. The world needs awake, conscious, free individuals. You can be one of them. You are called to it. The only question is whether you accept the call. Please, write in the comments which part of this message touched you most deeply. Your reflection could be a confirmation for others that they are not alone on this path. And if you feel that these words touch a truth within you, subscribe to this channel for more deep dives into the soul's depths.